All right, so today let's talk about something I think a lot of you are interested in, and that's manifestation. We're going to take a deep dive into this whole idea of manifestation, what it is and whether it works, and kind of what it really means in the bigger picture. And to get into it, we have this really fascinating excerpt called Why Manifestation Isn't Real: The Truth About Mind and Reality and How the Wealthy Control the Narrative. I think it'll challenge some of the usual ways we think about this stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this excerpt really goes right at, that popular idea that you can just achieve anything you want just by thinking the right thoughts. It's almost like it's saying the universe is just sitting there waiting for you to send out the right, vibes or something.
Yeah, it really pushes back on that whole, like good vibes only kind of thinking. The author's really trying to get at, is manifestation the way people talk about it? Does that even make sense when you look at, how the world actually works?
Exactly. And one of the big points the excerpt makes is that um, while, of course, our thoughts do influence our actions, they don't have this, magical ability to just directly change what's happening outside of us.
Okay, so like I can't just sit here and manifest a winning lottery ticket by just like thinking about it really hard.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, you could certainly manifest buying a ticket, which is an action, but in reality, there's all these complex factors at play, like economic systems or decisions that politicians make, or even just like plain old luck.
Hmm. So wishing for a promotion, you're saying won't necessarily make it happen, even if I'm like super, super positive.
Right. Think about, how hiring actually works. Usually there are these systemic things going on that affect who gets that promotion. Things like implicit bias, maybe you didn't have access to the right mentors, maybe you just don't have the right connections, things like that.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting because the excerpt's arguing that, all this focus on manifesting stuff for yourself can actually distract us from those bigger systemic issues that you were just talking about.
Yeah. It's kind of like we're being told to look inward, to just focus on our own thoughts and actions instead of looking outward, looking at the systems and the structures that actually, shape all of our lives.
So instead of working to like change those systems, we're busy trying to manifest our way out of any problem. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And the excerpt actually goes a step further. It suggests that this focus on individual manifestation, it might actually be something that benefits the wealthy elite.
Whoa. Okay, now that's a big claim. So how are they benefiting from this according to this excerpt?
So the excerpt says that all those success stories we're constantly being bombarded with, they're often used as a way to kind of motivate people towards goals that ultimately help the elite.
Okay, so it's like they're kind of shaping our desires and ambitions without us even realizing it.
Exactly. You know that classic saying, like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, it's such a deeply ingrained idea in our culture,
Yeah.
but it ignores the reality that, some people start off with boots and some people don't even have shoes.
Yeah, and it's a powerful story because it taps into that desire we all have, like to achieve something great. But it doesn't acknowledge all those inequalities in the system that make it so much harder for some people to succeed than others, no matter how much they believe or how hard they try.
Exactly. You could have someone who's working incredibly hard, like hustling day and night,
Hmm.
but the system itself might be working against them. And that's way harder to overcome than just some, negative thoughts, right?
Right. It's like telling everyone they can win a marathon, but some people are starting, miles behind the starting line. And this idea that, motivation can be used as like a tool of control, that's where this excerpt really gets me thinking.
For sure. It's suggesting that industries, especially the powerful ones like finance or tech, they love to put those self-made millionaires on a pedestal, but they don't really talk about the advantages those people had from the beginning. Maybe they had family wealth or access to a great education, or they were born into the right social networks.
So it's all about keeping people striving within a system that may not actually be designed to benefit them in the long run. That's a pretty unsettling thought.
It is, and it's everywhere. Think about how much uh, motivational content is out there, the whole hustle culture mentality. It all kind of feeds into this idea. It keeps people focused on achieving things as individuals instead of questioning whether the system itself is fair.
Yeah. I have to admit, I've definitely bought into some of those narratives myself. It's so easy to get caught up in that idea that if you just work hard enough, anything is possible. I don't know. Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, those stories are so convincing. But the important thing, and I think this is what the excerpt is really getting at, is to, break free from that illusion.
To recognize that manifestation, at least the way people usually talk about it, isn't some kind of magical solution.
Right. And that real empowerment might come from, understanding and actually challenging the systems that shape our lives.
So it's about going beyond just wishing for things to be different and actually taking action to create a more just and equitable world.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've been talking about this idea that just focusing on like manifesting what we want might actually stop us from seeing the bigger picture, all those systems that are like shaping our lives.
Yeah, and it's not to say that taking responsibility and working hard doesn't matter, because it totally does.
Right, right. It's
Uh,
not like we're saying individual effort doesn't count.
exactly. What this excerpt is really encouraging is like a shift in perspective, to look beyond just our own actions and really examine those systemic factors that, create barriers for certain groups.
So you're talking about things like not having equal access to education, healthcare, even just basic resources.
Exactly. Those are the like underlying structures that can hold people back no matter how much they try to like manifest themselves out of those situations.
So then how do we challenge these systems? I mean, the excerpt doesn't really give us a step-by-step guide or anything, but it does kind of hint at some ways we could maybe, create change.
Well, I think one of the most important steps is to question the narratives we've been given about success and achievement.
Like that self-made millionaire myth we talked about before.
Exactly. Instead of just accepting those stories as like the whole truth,
Yeah.
we need to really dig deeper and ask ourselves, who benefits from these narratives, and are they really achievable for everyone?
And if not, then what can we do to change that?
That's where collective action comes in. The excerpt is saying that real change only happens when people come together to challenge those systems that are, keeping inequality in place.
So you're talking about things like supporting policies that promote economic equality or advocating for education reform or even just raising awareness about these issues in our own communities.
Yeah, exactly. It's about going beyond individual manifestation and embracing like a more collective kind of action.
So it's not about just trying to manifest our own personal success. It's more about working together to create a world where everyone has like a fair shot at success.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so exciting, I think, because when we start thinking beyond just ourselves, we can tap into a much greater power for change.
So it's not just about wishing for a different reality. It's about actively working to create one.
Right. And that requires us to understand that we're not just, individuals trying to manifest our own destinies. We're all connected. We're members of a society that can either keep perpetuating inequality, or we can actually strive for justice.
Okay, so we've talked about debunking this whole myth of manifestation and seeing how these bigger systems play a role. But what about all those success stories we see around us? Are they all just a facade, like the excerpt says? Hmm. I think we should definitely explore that in the last part of our deep dive. So, okay, we've been talking about, how just focusing on manifestation might not be the whole story and how it's really important to look at those, big systems that affect all of our lives. But what about all those success stories we see, right? I mean, are they all just fake? Is that what the excerpt is trying to say?
Well, I don't think it's saying every single success story is like made up or anything. I mean, obviously, there are people who achieve great things because they work hard, or they're really talented, or maybe just because, they're really determined.
Right. So we're not saying that individual effort doesn't matter.
Not at all. But I think the key is to look at these stories with a critical eye.
So, like, we shouldn't just take them at face value. We should think about the context and everything.
Yeah, exactly. The excerpt is encouraging us to ask, what else was going on in that person's life? Did they have advantages that other people didn't? Were there like systemic things that helped them succeed?
So it's all about looking beyond just the individual and seeing, like, the bigger picture.
Right. Because even in those self-made success stories, you often find all these hidden privileges, maybe opportunities or support systems that they don't always talk about.
Yeah, like, for example, maybe someone came from a rich family or they went to, like, the best schools or they had a whole network of powerful people helping them out, right?
Exactly. And those kinds of things can really affect someone's path in life, no matter how hard they're working.
So it's not that individual effort isn't important. It's more like, it's not the only thing that matters, right?
Yeah. It's about understanding that success is usually this complicated mix of, individual effort and the systemic factors.
And those systemic factors can either, like, open doors for you or slam them shut, depending on, where you came from and what your circumstances are.
And this brings up like a really important question. If we kind of move away from this idea of manifesting wealth, what are some other ways to think about success? And how can we, create a future that's more fair for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, maybe it's about changing how we define success so that it's not just about money and status.
Maybe it's about, working towards a society where everyone has a chance to reach their full potential, no matter, what their background is.
A society where success is measured by, how well everyone is doing, not just by how much individuals achieve.
Right. And that's a vision that's definitely worth working towards, even if we can't just, manifest it into existence.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I really hope you're leaving with a better understanding of, this whole idea of manifestation and what success really means and all those systems that are affecting our lives, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah. And remember, real empowerment doesn't come from just wishing for things. It comes from understanding those systems and working to create a world where, everyone actually has a chance to have a good life.
And that's a journey we can all be a part of. So thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep fighting for a